Protect the flock, we rally in the lion's den. Shield to shield, the storm is thundering. Unleash the roar, let the lions run towards the night until the battle's won.
All right, welcome back to another edition of the Lion's Den. Going to do some more reading, some 6-day count stuff. All right, we're going to do that for another few weeks anyway. 6-day count stuff. 6-day counts are up and roaring, and so we're going to keep doing this book. Now, a lot of people have asked about the book. What I'm reading from is from 2018. It's called the 2018 NALC Guide to Route Inspections, and it's a very good book. The one whose office it came out of is Lou Drass, Mr. Lucian Drass. If y'all don't know Lou, he's retired vice president and a very smart guy. Matter of fact, he just came out with a podcast, and it's called Drastic Measures, DRASS, Drastic Measures, named after himself. That's kind of clever, right? A lot of the business agents are putting it out right now, so it's good, very informational. Y'all got some homework for me, okay? I never give y'all homework. I'm going to give you some homework. Go listen to Lou's podcast. It's called Drastic Measures, all right? Go listen to it. That's your homework. Go listen to it. And then, again, I won't have an episode Sunday. I won't be in town. Tuesday, I'll have another episode on From 8 Arbitration. It's going to be called Receipts, okay? So y'all make sure to tell everybody you know to listen Tuesday, because I'm going to have an episode called Receipts. All right. I think y'all enjoyed it. Should be entertaining, because you can't just sit and read all the time. You got to keep people's attention, and reading just ain't going to do it. And so we're going to have some fun, right? You got to keep things entertaining, or you're going to lose your audience, right? They don't want to be bored to death. Just listen to me read. So no episode Sunday. I'm going to have one Tuesday called Receipts. Again, go listen to Lou Drass's new podcast called Drastic Measures. And like I said, a lot of the business agents are putting it out for the carriers to listen to, which is pretty awesome. You know, don't you think that the business agents are putting it out there? So got us a new podcast. I went over all the podcasts the other day for the city letter carriers. Here's another one, Drastic Measures. Y'all enjoy it. All right, I'm going to pick up where I left off last time, page 52. Page 52, and we're going to read for a while. But a lot of people are getting a lot of things from this, and they should. Lou Drass wrote this thing, and he's very knowledgeable. So, Section 4, after the week of count and inspection. Now, this is a very, very critical thing in your station. If you're having a 6-day count, make sure your carriers are aware that the week after is just as important. It counts, okay? So, after the week of count and inspection, general, only the regular carrier's time is used. If a regular carrier is assigned to a route, only the carrier's times can be used to evaluate and or adjust a route. M39, Section 241.35. M39, 241.35. M, totals line. Enter on this line the totals of columns A, B, C, D, E, F, and G, excluding the time shown for replacement carrier or carrier technician in columns A, B, C, D, and E. The difference between the totals of columns A and B must equal the difference between the totals of columns C and D. Enter on totals line under total pieces delivered, totals of columns 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, and 7 for all days. So that's very confusing until you get the form. All right, and then it'll make sense. N, averages line. 1. Divide the totals for columns A and B by the number of days for which time is recorded for the regular carrier in each column. 2. Compute average under or over standard office time for regular carrier by dividing the difference between the totals of columns C and D by the number of days on which the route was served by the regular carrier. Do not include over or under standard time entries for services performed by replacement carrier or carrier technician. 3. If the total over standard is greater than the total under standard, The resulting average will be average over standard and must be entered in column C. If the total under standard is greater than the total over standard, the resulting average will be average under standard and must be entered in column D. Following is an example of how to compute averages when both over and under time exists. 224 under standard less 37 over standard equals 147, or 107 minutes divided by 5, number of days, equals 21 minutes average under standard, enter in column D. And I'll read that again. The following is an example of how to compute averages when both over and under time exists. 2 hours 24 minutes under standard less 37 over standard equals 1 hour and 47, or 107 minutes divided by 5, number of days, equals 21 minutes average under standard, entered in column D. 4. Divide the total hours and minutes recorded under net street time used, column E, by the number of days for which time is recorded, exclusive of bracketed time used by replacement carrier or carrier technician, to obtain the average daily street time used. 2. Recording replacement carrier time on PS Form 1840. The days the regular carrier does not carry the route are identified on Form 1840 as explained below in sections 241.32 and 241.33 of the M39 Handbook. These days are excluded when evaluating the route. M39 241.32. The inclusive dates from and to columns on the extreme left must be completed to show the inclusive dates of the count period and under day each day of the week. Enter the letter R immediately to the left of the day on which the route was served by a replacement carrier, the letter T on the day the carrier technician T6 served the route. Circle the day on which the route was inspected. 241.33. Bracket the time entries in columns A, B, C, D, and E for the days on which the route was served by a replacement carrier or carrier technician T6, because these figures are to be excluded when entering the figures on the total line for columns A, B, C, D, and E. 3. Vacant routes. So what should be done with vacant routes? The answer depends on the particular circumstances of each route. For instance, if there is a regular carrier assigned to a route that isn't present during the week of count for any reason, standard office time and the 1840B street time must be used. This is true because of the language discussed above in section 241.3 of the M39 Handbook as referenced above. If there is a vacant route with no carrier assigned to it at all, there must be a qualified replacement carrier assigned to the route in order for the data collected to be accepted as valid. Whether or not a qualified replacement was assigned to a route that is truly vacant, has no regular carrier assigned to it, during the week of the count is a judgment call that you're going to have to make. Once again, it just depends on the particular circumstances for each route. Let's say you have a carrier that's been holding down the same vacant route 2 years, and she is assigned to do the route during the week of count. In this example, it would be hard to argue that she wasn't a qualified replacement. On the other hand, let's say a carrier is assigned to a route during the week of count that she doesn't perform on a regular basis, or if it's common knowledge that the carrier doesn't normally take his or her breaks and or works through lunch. In either of these examples, it would be easy to argue that she wasn't a qualified replacement. 4. Exclude Saturday on routes with abbreviated or no Saturday delivery. Saturday is excluded from the count week on routes with abbreviated or no delivery on Saturday. The language in section 221.11 of the M39 and section 921.2 of the M41 is clear. Routes with abbreviated or no delivery on Saturdays are only inspected for 5 consecutive delivery days, Monday through Friday. Management may try to convince you that if Saturday is excluded, then Monday must also be excluded. This is simply not true, and that will happen. I assure you that will happen. We see it all the time. And management's justification is, if we take out the Saturday, all that mail's accumulated on Saturday on these business routes, So you're going to get a lot higher time on Monday. So only to be fair, if you're going to take all the time out for Saturday, then you need to take all the time out for Monday, because it's not exemplary the rest of the week. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. There's no language. There's no language to support that position. All right. So M39 221.11 schedule. The count of mail on all letter delivery routes, regular and auxiliary, must be for 6 consecutive delivery days on one-trip routes and for 5 consecutive delivery days exclusive of Saturday on 2-trip routes or 1-trip routes with abbreviated or no delivery on Saturday. It is not mandatory that mail counts begin on Saturday and continue through Friday, so long as they are made on consecutive delivery days. M41 921.2 schedule. M20 921.21. The count of mail period on all letter delivery routes, both regular and auxiliary, shall be A, for 6 consecutive delivery days on one-trip routes, and B, for 5 consecutive delivery days exclusive of Saturday on multi-trip routes or one-trip routes with abbreviated or no delivery on Saturday. 921.22. It is not mandatory that mail counts begin on Monday and continue through Saturday, but they must be made on consecutive delivery days. Office. 1. Exception to office standards. Management may make an exception to normal office standards for letter carriers with 25 years of continuous service or those over the age of 55. M39 section 242.214. And I never thought I'd be there, but I'm almost 56. So this applies to me, and that's sad. I'll read that again. Management may make an exception to normal office standards for letter carriers with 25 years of continuous service or those over the age of 55, M39 section 242.214. M39 242.214. An exception may be made for carriers who have served continuously for 25 years or more or are over 55 years of age. Before making an exception, determine that the carrier cannot meet the standard office time and that his or her conduct and performance are otherwise satisfactory. The office time allowed for an exempted carrier must be reasonable and be determined by management. 2. Volume adjustments. No volume adjustments will be made to office or street work evaluations unless the mail volume has changed by more than 13%. M39 section 242.312. M39 242.312. No mail volume adjustments will be made to carrier office work, casing, and strapping out functions or street work evaluations unless the mail volume for the week of count and inspection is at least 13% higher or lower than the average mail volume for the period between the most recent regular and the current inspection, excluding the months of June, July, August, and December. 3. Total office time credit. Office time is normally evaluated at the lesser of the letter carrier's average office time used during the count week or the average standard time during the count week. M39 section 242.311. M39 242.311. Under normal conditions, the office time allowance for each letter route shall be fixed at the lesser of the carrier's average time used to perform office work during the count period, or the average standard allowable office time. Street. 1. 2 street time selection choices. Management has 2 choices for selecting an evaluated street time for a route. M39 section 242.321. M39 242.321. For evaluation and adjustment purposes, the base for determining the street time shall be either A. The average street time for the 7 weeks random time card analysis and the week following the week of count and inspection, or B. The average street time used during the week of count and inspection. 2. Street time selection documentation requirement. Management is required to explain why the street time selected was chosen. The selection cannot be solely because the time was lower. M39 section 242.322, and this one's going to be very important. M39 242.322. The manager will note by explanatory comment on the reverse of Form 1840 or attachments thereto why the base street time allowance for the route was established at the time selected. The manager's selection of the street time allowance cannot be based on the sole criterion that the particular time selected was the lower. And in my case, on my 6-day count we had a few months ago, every time taken was the lower one. 100%. Every single one. And they knew that they weren't going to win that. Of course, we settled it, and they took out an hour out of my station. But every single one, 100%, was the lower time. That's a very good argument for us. A very good argument for us. 3. How to record auxiliary assistance. When a letter carrier receives auxiliary assistance on the street during the count week, the replacement's time is not recorded. Instead, the time it took the regular carrier to deliver the same portion of the route on the day of inspection is added to the street time for the day. M39 section 241.35D. M39 241.35D. Column E, net street time used. Transfer the total net street time from item E, column H, form 1838, recorded in hours and minutes. When auxiliary street time assistance is given, add to the regular carrier's street time the actual time that it took him or her to deliver the same portion of the route on the day of inspection. Do not use the replacement street time. Obtain actual time from Form 3999. A record of any unusual wait for transportation or other conditions that would cause an unusual variance in street time must be noted under Route Examiner's comments portion of the form with actual time used identified for a clarification to assist in route analysis. 4. Improper deductions of street time. Management may not make a time deduction because a letter carrier failed to finger mail or take proper shortcuts. Instead, management is required to instruct the letter carrier to use proper procedure and make every effort to reinspect the route prior to adjustments being implemented. M39 section 242.344. M39 242.344. If during the route inspection, the supervisor notes that the letter carrier fails to properly to finger mail or to take proper shortcuts, and that those failures were sufficient enough to warrant a time adjustment for the route, a reinspection will be made after the letter carrier has been instructed regarding the proper procedures to be used. Every effort will be made to conduct such reinspection prior to the implementation of the adjustments in the delivery unit. 5. Deductions due to operational change claims. Management is required to document and explain any changes made to carrier's base time due to an operational change. This change must be discussed during the consultation. M39 section 242.345. M39 242.345. Any time adjustment to a carrier's base street time due to identified improper practices or operational changes, such as, but not limited to, the elimination of relay or park points or travel pattern changes, must be documented by appropriate comments on the reverse of Form 1840 or attachments thereto. Such adjustments must be discussed with the carrier at the time of consultation concerning the route evaluation. If the carrier, at the time of the consultation, notes the absence of such documentation in writing on Form 1840 or attachment thereto, and initials and dates the Form 1840 or attachment thereto, and management does not supply such documentation within 1 week with a copy to the carrier, the time adjustment shall be disallowed. So here's the thing that we're running into, and a lot of people are contacting me across the country with their 6-day counts. Management's not doing the consultation. They're not doing the consultation. Any provision that requires a consultation, I'm going to say they violated it. And that's going to be an immediate grievance from me. That's going to be an instant grievance. I'm going to file that grievance. And the reason I do that, some people don't, I do. The reason I do that is because at the end of the day, if all the routes are 8 hours, most arbitrators aren't going to consider it. If all the routes are 8 and they violated 1,000 things and they're still at 8 hours, most are going to say, hey, at the end of the day, route should be 8 hours and they're 8 hours, or as close to 8 hours as possible. So I'm going to file instant grievances and try to get that thing kicked out. All right. So that's just me. Ask your president or ask your business agent how they do things. But me, I want to file as many grievances as possible. I can put those into the big grievance when you file one, a month down the line, 2 months down the line. when you see that your routes are overburdened and you file the big one saying that management violated M39 Section 2 because my routes are not 8 hours, as close to 8 hours as possible. And then you can put all those resolutions in there and say, here's part of the reason why. They violated this thing the whole way through. So just ask your president, your business agents what they would do, but that's me. That's what I do. And JB did that for me. Of course, we ended up not filing the big grievance because they just took an hour out. But Section 5, carrier consultations. Route evaluation consultation. Here's what we're just talking about. 1. PS Forms 1838 and 1840 before the consultation. Management is required to provide Form 1838 to the letter carrier 5 calendar days before the consultation, and Form 1840 to the carrier 1 day before the consultation. M39 Section 241.4. M39 241.4, providing carrier with summary. A completed copy of the front of Form 1840, reflecting totals and averages from Forms 1838, day of inspection data, route examiner's comments, and analysis of office work functions and actual time recordings, will be furnished the carrier at least 1 day in advance of consultation. Completed copies of Form 1838 will be given to the carrier at least 5 calendar days prior to consultation. 2. Time disallowances and related comments provided before the consultation. All time disallowances and related comments on the Form 1840 will be furnished to the carrier 1 day before the consultation. M39 Section 242.347. M39 242.347. All time disallowances and related comments will be noted on Form 1840 or attachments thereto and furnished the letter carrier at least 1 day prior to consultation. 3. Discussion of operational changes during consultation. Time adjustments due to operational changes must be discussed during the carrier consultation. If management does not have any comments documenting the change, the carrier may note the absence of documentation on the Form 1840 or an attachment. If management does not provide the documentation within a week, the time adjustment is disallowed. M39 Section 242.345. M39 242.345. Any time adjustments to a carrier's base street time due to identified improper practices or operational changes, such as, but not limited to, the elimination of relay or park points or travel pattern changes, must be documented by appropriate comments on the reverse of Form 1840 or attachments thereto. Such adjustments must be discussed with the carrier at the time of consultation concerning the route evaluation. If the carrier, at the time of the consultation, notes the absence of such documentation in writing on Form 1840 or attachment thereto, and initials and dates the Form 1840 or attachments thereto, and management does not supply such documentation within 1 week with a copy to the carrier, the time adjustment shall be disallowed. Note, the letter carrier should note the absence of documentation in writing, either on the Form 1840 or an attachment. The carrier should initial and date the notation. 4. Discussion of days excluded from 1840B 8-week analysis. If management excludes a day or days from the 8-week analysis, the reasons must be documented and discussed with the carrier during the consultation. If management does not have comments documenting the change, the carrier may note this absence of documentation on the Form 1840 or an attachment. If management does not provide the documentation within a week, the exclusion of the day or days is disallowed. M39 Section 242.346. M39 242.346. Any claim that conditions during the 8-week time card analysis period or the week of count and inspection were not normal so as to justify not including such day or days in the base street time computation must be documented. Such adjustments are to be discussed with the carrier at the time of consultation concerning the route evaluation. If the carrier at the time of consultation notes the absence of documentation in writing on the Form 1840 or attachments thereto, initials and dates the Form 1840 or attachments thereto, and management does not supply such documentation within 1 week with a copy to the carrier, the time adjustments shall be disallowed. Note, again, The letter carrier should note the absence of documentation in writing, either on the Form 1840 or an attachment. The carrier should initial and date the notation. Route adjustment consultation. When relief or an addition to a letter carrier's route is considered, the carrier should be consulted regarding the adjustment. The reasons for the adjustment should be discussed. The comments and recommendations of the carrier should be recorded on 1840, as well as if there is an agreement or disagreement with a proposed adjustment. The carrier is not required to sign a statement. M39, Section 243.11a. M39, 243.11a. After considering all factors, the postmaster or designated manager shall decide the tentative amount of relief or addition required to place the route on as nearly an 8-hour daily basis as possible. The carrier should now be consulted concerning any proposed relief or addition recommended for the route and the reasons for the adjustment. The comments and recommendations of the carrier and whether there is agreement or disagreement with the adjustments along with reasons should be entered on Form 1840. The carrier should not be required to sign a statement. Items mentioned should merely be entered on the form as a record. Promptly after consultation, if the carrier requests that the reverse of his or her copy of Form 1840 be completed, the carrier must immediately give the copy to the manager for completion and return no later than 7 calendar days. The carrier's comments cannot be just dismissed. They must be considered by the postmaster or designee. M39, Section 243.11c. M39, 243.11c. The postmaster or designee must consider the comments of the individual who inspected the route, consult with the manager of the delivery unit, and consider suggestions from the carrier servicing the route. The following consultation explanation was originally printed in Chapter 1 of the NELC Routed Protection Program and reprinted in the 2011 Letter Carrier Resource Guide. The traditional 6-day route count and inspection consultations. Postal regulations require management to consult with a regular carrier regarding evaluation and adjustment of his or her assigned route. Carrier routes are evaluated and adjusted using the complex data gathering process described in Chapter 2 of the M39 Handbook and explained in detail in this manual. However, while numbers and averages and data are useful in evaluating times and adjustments, postal regulations also implicitly recognize that the individual letter carrier assigned to a route is in the best position to make these assessments. These consultations are mandatory. Management is not allowed to simply meet with the carrier and tell him or her what they came up with and what adjustment management intends to make. To consult means to seek an opinion as a guide to one's own judgment. You, the regular carrier, have an important role in determining the evaluated time of and adjustment to your assigned route. Do not allow management to pretend to consult with a wink and nod and simply go through the motions. Postal regulations are very explicit about what is required regarding consultations. Again, here's what's happening. Headquarters is telling district how many routes are going to come out of these stations. District is notifying the local station, this is how many hours are coming out before the count and inspections even start. These are how many hours we're going to take out of your station. A lot of these consultations are not happening. Why? Because they know that a lot of these things are going to get kicked back, thrown out. They're making a lot of money taking all these routes out. It's going to be up until the fall or early next year before these things get hurt and they have to put the routes back. So they've made an enormous amount of money taking out routes, excessive routes. And then if you have a route adjustment process, like they're saying is going to happen in January, they don't have to worry about anything. They'll say both parties put them back. So make sure we're having these carrier consultations. A lot of these things are going to be skipping because they've been told to do these things. They're fitting that square peg into a round hole, and it just doesn't fit. And so when they come in taking all these absurd, I've heard them taking 6, 7, 8 routes out of stations, we're grieving those things. They will put them back. Again, management's going to make a lot of money unless we hit them for about $10 a calendar day until they put them back. Then we'll make ourselves some money. But make sure we're doing those consultations. If not, I would grieve it immediately. Arm yourself with detailed knowledge of those regulations. They require management to do all of the following. 1. Consult with time constraints. Management must place adjustments into effect within 52 calendar days of the completion of the Count M39 Section 211.3. Management must complete all consultations within that 52-day window in a manner that allows full consideration of the carrier's comments and suggestions concerning the evaluation of the route and any proposed adjustments. 2. Provide documents in advance. Management must give the carrier the following documents in advance of the consultation regarding the evaluation of the route. A. Completed copies of Form 1838 at least 5 calendar days prior to consultation, M39 Section 241.4, M41 Section 923.1. B. Completed copy of front of Form 1840 at least 1 day prior to consultation. This completed copy must contain the following: M39 Section 241.4, M41 Section 923.1. 1. Totals and averages from Forms 1838. 2. Days of inspection data. 3. Examiner's comments. 4. Analysis of office work functions. 5. Time recordings. C. Partially completed copy of reverse of Form 1840 or attachments thereto at least 1 day prior to consultation. It must contain the following. 1. All time disallowances, M39 Section 242.347. 2. Related comments, M39 Section 242.345 and 347. Discuss certain matters. Management is required to discuss certain matters at A. The evaluation consultation, including 1. Mail volume, M39 Section 232.1c. I'm going to read this again. Management is required to discuss certain matters at A. The evaluation consultation. So here's all the things that they're supposed to do that they're not doing when they don't do a consultation. M39 Section 232.1c, mail volume. Evaluation of route, M39 Section 232.1c. 3. Any time adjustment to evaluated street time based on alleged improper practices or operational changes, M39 Section 242.345. 4. Any adjustment of evaluated street time based on a claim that conditions during 8-week time card period or week of count were not normal so as to justify not including such day or days in base street time computation, M39 Section 242.346. B. The adjustment consultation if management proposes relief or addition to your route, including M39 Section 243.11. 1. The proposed relief or addition. 2. The reasons for the proposed adjustment. 3. Whether the carrier agrees or disagrees. 4. The reasons the carrier agrees or disagrees. 5. The comments and recommendations of the carrier. 4. Record your recommendations and comments. Management must enter the following on the Form 1840, M39, Section 243.11. A. Your comments. B. Your recommendations. C. Whether you agree or disagree with the proposed adjustments. D. The reasons for your agreement or disagreement. 5. Refrain from requiring you to sign anything. Management is not allowed to require you to sign a statement during the consultations. M39 Section 243.11a. 6. Consult with you a second time. Management must hold a second consultation if adjustments are proposed. M39 Section 243.11a. 7. Consider your suggestions. Management is required to consider the suggestions from the carrier serving the route. M39 Section 243.11c. 8. Permit notation of absence of documentation of street time disallowances. If management attempts to adjust your street time due to alleged improper practices, operational changes, or claimed abnormal conditions during the 8-week analysis, management must document it on the reverse of the Form 1840 and discuss it with you during the consultation period regarding the route evaluation. If management fails to so document, you have the right, during the consultation, to note the absence of such documentation by writing a notation on and initialing and dating the Form 1840. M39, Section 242.345 and 346. 9. Disallow street time adjustments if documentation is not provided to carrier within 1 week of notation by carrier. If you make a notation on the Form 1840, as noted above, about the absence of documentation supporting a management time disallowance, management has 1 week to supply such documentation to you. If management fails to do so within 1 week, the time adjustment shall be disallowed. M39, Section 242.345 and 346. 10. Provide completed copy of reverse of Form 1840 promptly after consultation. Promptly after consultation, if the carrier requests that the reverse of his or her copy of Form 1840 be completed, the carrier must immediately give the copy to the manager for completion and return no later than 7 calendar days. M39, Section 243.11a. You should make every effort to show your Forms 1838C, 1838, and Form 1840 to your NALC representative prior to the consultation. Your union representatives can help identify any problems or mistakes on the forms. You will thereby be in a better position to protect your rights at the consultation. If you cannot obtain an NALC review in advance, don't panic. There will be time afterwards to address any problems. Remember, completed Forms 1838 5 days in advance, completed front Form 1840 1 day in advance, partially completed reverse Form 1840 1 day in advance, full discussion at consultation. Management writes your comments on the Form 1840. No requirement for you to sign. You write on Form 1840 in the absence of documentation. Request a completed copy of the front and reverse sides of Form 1840. Management has 7 days to return documentation and Form 1840. After the consultation, you should contact your shop steward for grievance investigation and processing if management violates any of the procedures explained above. In addition, you should contact your steward for grievance investigation and processing in the following circumstances. Now, here's what I do. This is how I do it. I know there's a lot of presidents say we don't do any of these things. I think I had an episode where a business agent sided with the branch president for removing a shop steward because the shop steward was trying to do this right here. He said, hey, we're filing multiple grievances. There's not just one big grievance. And the branch president said, no, remove the shop steward. Came to the union meeting. All the carriers came to defend the shop steward. Said, hey, this dude is whipping management's butt for us. And all the carriers raised their hand to put him back in there. There's only one that didn't, the NBA. But because he was saying these are instant grievances. These things we grieve immediately. Well, this is what Fred Rolando and Lou Drass said as well. You should contact your shop steward for grievance investigation and processing if management violates any of the procedures explained above. That means an instant grievance. In addition, you should contact your shop steward for grievance investigation and processing the following circumstances. That's an instant grievance. You're not doing that if you're going to file a grievance 2 months down the line. 1. Unfair or incorrect adjustment if you believe the adjustment to your route is incorrect or unfair. 2. Management use of core. If management uses the carrier optimal routing core program to adjust routes, you can expect management not to follow the core settlement, M1661, and or the core relay settlement, M1859, when unilaterally adjusting routes using core. No adjustment in 52 days. If management fails to implement any needed adjustment within 52 days after the consultation of the week of route and inspection. Management must implement adjustments within 52 days unless an exception is granted by the district manager. Exceptions may only be made when warranted by valid operational circumstances, substantiated by a detailed written statement and submitted to the local union within 7 days of the grant of the exception. The union has the right to grieve any exception, M39, Section 211.3, M1072. It is important to note that the evaluation process does not end with the implementation of adjustment. Management is required to evaluate the adjustment. The evaluation includes analysis of data generated after implementation of the adjustment, including volume data, time records, etc. In addition, management is required to complete a new Form 3999 after adjustments are implemented to reflect the new authorized route travel pattern and schedule, M39 section 243.613. 6. Route adjustments. 1. PS Form 1840 reverse and DOAS versus core. Route adjustments are made using one of the two management systems, Delivery Operations Information System, DOAS, or Carrier Optimal Routing, CORE. Regardless of which system is used, territory adjustments are always recorded on Form 1840 reverse. However, the Forms 1840 reverse generated by DOAS and CORE are different. A simple way to tell which kind of adjustment your office is getting is to look at the time values for territory transferred. On a DOAS Form 1840 reverse, the values will be in whole minutes. On a CORE Form 1840 reverse, the values will be in minutes and seconds. It is important to determine which program is used to adjust the routes. The next 2 pages illustrate the difference between a DOAS Form 1840 reverse and a CORE Form 1840 reverse. For information and guidance on how to read Form 1840 reverse, see pages 131 to 145 in the forms description of this guide. PS Form 1840 reverse generated by DOAS. The time value inside the box are in hours and whole minutes. This is an easy way to see that this route adjustment was made using the DOAS program. And when you get the 1840, you'll go to the right and you'll see office time, street time. And that's where you'll find it. If you get your 1840 and you're looking at it, you'll go to the right, you'll see office time and street time. Okay? And that's how you'll find it. PS Form 1840 reverse generated by CORE. The time values inside the box are in minutes and seconds. This is an easy way to see that this route adjustment was made using the CORE program. Therefore, all the language in M1661 must be complied with. Again, you'll go over to the right, office time, MMSS, street time, minutes, seconds, okay? Core settlements, M1661 and M1859. The national level settlements, M1661 and 1859, reproduced on the next pages, require management to meet specific obligations when using CORE, such as documenting, explaining, and validating time changes to travel to, travel from, travel within, and relay time for each route. This is in addition to the normal obligation to document any changes to street time, including changes to allied, relay, or travel time. On Form 1840 reverse, note, management is required to discuss all the matters described above at the proposed route adjustment consultation. And here's M1661. The Carrier Optimal Routing Core process is a management tool to assist with the adjustment of letter carrier routes pursuant to Chapter 2 of Handbook M39. No components of the core program or application of the core process will be inconsistent with the route inspection, evaluation, or adjustment process found in Chapter 2 of the M39 Handbook. Should the Postal Service develop core for use in the minor route adjustment process, related components of the core program or application of the core process will be consistent with a specific minor route adjustment formula in Section 141.19 of Handbook M39. Local parties that have established by mutual agreement an alternate route adjustment method may also use applications of core consistent with their alternate route adjustment process. To facilitate the practical application of this understanding, when transferring territory, the back of the PS Form 1840 will indicate by sector segment any change in street credit from the actual street time used in sector segment on PS Form 3999, including all relay, travel, allied time, etc. Any such adjustment to the carrier's actual street time must be documented and explained by appropriate comments on the reverse of PS Form 1840. Additionally, any time adjustment to the base street time, which must be selected pursuant to M39 Section 242.321, will be documented and explained under the comments section on the reverse of PS Form 1840. Travel to, travel from, and travel within times must be validated, documented, and discussed during carrier consultation. The actual time should be taken from the inspection PS Form 3999 unless a new pattern is created during the route adjustment process. If a new travel pattern has been created, the new times must be validated. Notwithstanding any disputes regarding documentation and/or justification for time adjustments made, the intent of the previous paragraph is for letter carrier to be made aware of any proposed time adjustments to the carrier's base street time and/or the street time of the territory being transferred. Time adjustments for territory being transferred will be by sector segment, including all relay, allied, parcels, accountables, etc. Any time adjustment to a carrier's base street time must comply with the M39 section 242.345 through 242.347. Any grievance held pending a decision on this case will be resolved consistent with the principles of the agreement. Now here's M1859. Currently, the time value associated with retrieving relays for delivery on a route is recorded on PS Form 3999 and credited separately for each relay as relay time. In the core program, the actual total relay time recorded on PS Form 3999 for a route is divided by the actual number of relays on the route prior to the route adjustment to determine an average relay time. When the core program generates a proposed route adjustment, it assigns the average relay time for each relay on a route. After reviewing this matter, we mutually agreed to resolve the grievance as follows. If any existing relays remain unchanged during the proposed adjustment, the actual relay time from PS Form 3999 will be used. This would be accomplished with a miscellaneous street time adjustment on PS Form 1840 reverse through the use of the Allied time editing process in core. Any other relays created by core will be reviewed and discussed with the regular city letter carrier assigned to the route during the route adjustment consultation. If the carrier believes the relay times are appropriate, no changes will be necessary. The supervisor and regular city letter carriers assigned to the route who are present at the route adjustment consultation will initial PS Form 1840 reverse reflect the agreement. I'll read that again. Any other relays created by core will be reviewed and discussed with the regular city letter carrier assigned to the route during the route adjustment consultation. And that's another thing that you can catch them on. If they do a carrier consultation, and I call it the core consultation, if you adjust a route by core, you should have that consultation with the carrier telling them what's going on. We've caught management in this time and time again. I call it the core consultation. So that's M1859. Where agreement is reached that an adjustment is necessary to the relay time, the amount of time to be added or deducted to the relay time will be recorded in the comments section of PS Form 1840 reverse. The supervisor and regular city letter carrier assigned to the route who are present at the route adjustment consultation will initial PS Form 1840 reverse to reflect the agreement reached. A miscellaneous street time adjustment will be made in core to the route before the route adjustment is finalized and implemented to reflect the agreement. Where agreement cannot be reached, the carrier's comments will be recorded on PS Form 1840 reverse and considered before the route adjustment is finalized and implemented. The supervisor and regular city letter carrier assigned to the route who are present at the route adjustment consultation will initial PS Form 1840 reverse. Such consideration will be given consistent with the principle of adjusting routes to consist of as nearly 8 hours daily work as possible pursuant to Section 242.122 of Handbook M39. This agreement does not change or alter the requirements to document on PS Form 1840 reverse and discuss with the carrier during the route evaluation consultation any time adjustment to a carrier's base street time in accordance with Section 242.345 of Handbook M39 and the National Pre-Arbitration Settlement on the core process. What to look for? There are a number of things that shop stewards should look for to determine if management has planned or made improper route adjustments in your station post office. The following are a few things to keep an eye on. Some offices may have up to 3 days of inspection on the street. If a route has more than 1 day of inspection, the day with the $39.99 time closest to the selected street time for the route must be used to transfer territory. Compare the net street time used on Form 1840, column E, with a tax employing everything report for the regular carry each day. If there is a difference between the time on the form and the time on the actual clock rings, management has deducted street time. Remember, you must deduct 30 minutes for lunch from the street time on the clock rings. If you find differences like this, investigate the matter and look for improper deductions such as improper street waiting time or a manual street time deduction. More on this later in this section. Compare the tax employee everything reports with the Form 1840 to a Be Sure management brackets and excludes this time in columns A through G. The regular carrier did not work and does not bracket or exclude the time the regular carrier did work. Check to see if auxiliary time is entered in column G on Form 1840, and if so, be sure it is properly credited to the route. This time must be calculated and credited manually. When auxiliary assistance is provided on the street, the time credited to the route is not the time it took the replacement carrier to perform the work. Instead, the time the regular carrier used to deliver that same territory on the day of inspection is credited to the route. This time must be calculated by reviewing two forms. One, the first is Form 3996, which should specify the particular territory to be delivered as auxiliary assistance. It is especially important during the week of route count inspection that all carriers assigned to a route specify the territory to be delivered as auxiliary assistance on Form 3996. 2. The second is Form 3999. Management determines from the 3999 how long it took the regular carrier on the day of inspection to deliver the same territory delivered by the carrier providing auxiliary assistance. The time it took the regular carrier to deliver the same territory on the day of inspection is then added to the time the regular carrier used to deliver the rest of the route on the day the assistance was provided. Again, be sure you're looking at the correct Form 3999 if there are multiple days of inspection. For example, a regular carrier on a route gives away a portion of the route and delivers 4 hours and 38 minutes of the route. The carrier providing auxiliary assistance properly fills out the Form 3996 showing that it took them 1 hour and 32 minutes to 39 minutes to deliver the portion of the route. The regular carrier's time for the same portion of the route on Form 3999 was 1 hour and 44 minutes. The street time credited to the route on Form 1840 for that day should be 6 hours and 22 minutes, 4 hours and 38 minutes plus 1 hour and 44 minutes. Verify that the office time credit for each route is accurate. Look for time deductions or other changes to the line items times recorded by the letter carriers on Form 1838C for the week of inspection. Verify that these times were properly transferred to Form 1838 and then to Form 1840. Look for and investigate any manual or miscellaneous office time deductions. They will normally appear towards the end of Form 1840 reverse. All these forms are thoroughly explained in the forms description section of this guide. Check to see if management selected the most representative street time for each route that was inspected. There are two possible selections for the street time. 1. The average street time used by the regular carrier during the week of inspection, from Form 1840. 2. The average street time from the 8-week time card analysis, Form 1840B. Management may not simply select the lower of these two times. The reasons for their selection must be notated on Form 1840 reverse M39 Section 242.321. M39 242.321. For evaluation and adjustment purposes, the base for determining the street time shall be either A. The average street time for the 7 weeks random time card analysis and the week following the week of count and inspection, or B. The average street time used during the week of count and inspection. 242.322. The manager will note by explanatory comment on the reverse of Form 1840 or attachments thereto why the base street time allowance for the route was established at the time selected. The manager's selection of the street time allowance cannot be based on the sole criterion that the particular time selected was the lower. An easy way to see if management is creating a pattern of choosing the lowest street time simply because it is the lowest time is to record the street time choices as shown below. This will make it easier to prove a violation. And then it's got just an example there below, and it's self-explanatory if you're looking at it, but you're not. So, all right, that's it for this week. 50 minutes of reading. There's nothing more boring than reading. Just imagine just sitting down reading for 50 minutes straight. That's terrible. It's horrible. But I appreciate you listening to 55 minutes of reading. All right, but hey, we're in the thick of it. It helps you from not having to read yourself. I'll read it to you. All right, and put you to sleep. Read it at night, and it'll put you to sleep every time. Right? It almost puts me to sleep. I yawn every time. I'm in my uniform. Just walked in the door, sat down, and I've been yawning the whole time. And I just got home, and so it's early. But anyway, I appreciate you, city letter carriers. I do. I love you more than you know. I love you more than I know, and I'll do whatever I can to help you and protect you. All right? That will never change. That will never change. Even when we take over, that will never change. I'm going to do everything I can to help you and protect you. I've been a city letter carrier for 32 years. 32 years. I have never held a position with a union in my 32 years. I've just been delivering. And so I know what it is, what it's like. All right? So I love you dearly. And I'll talk to y'all Tuesday with receipts. Remember now, go listen to Lou Drass's new podcast, Drastic Measures. Drastic Measures. All right? And I'll talk to y'all Tuesday. I love you. Bye.